Dalton, if you want any of those details, you can go onto our website.
Well, on Friday, we asked for your opinion in our 9MSM poll question, should Australia become a republic? Nearly 150,000 people voted, with 57% of people choosing in favour of a republic.
With more on the debate, we're joined by Alison Henry from the Australian Republican Movement, monarchist Professor David Flint, and Romilly Weeks, royal correspondent for the UK television network ITN. A very good morning to you all. Romilly, welcome to Australia. You enjoying the welcome?
I am, yes, a little bit jet lagged still. I don't know how the Queen does it at age 79. I'm having trouble myself.
Well, you would know firsthand. Does this sort of debate worry her in any way?
I think she's aware of it, certainly, but I think she has the feeling that, she certainly said at the time of the referendum that whatever Australians want, they should do. I think she probably feels that it is going to happen at some point. She probably hopes that it won't happen during her reign, I imagine.
Do you think the British care if we do become a republic?
I think it's seen as inevitable now that it's hard to have somebody who's essentially seen as a foreign queen being your head of state.
David, we've just heard it's inevitable. Isn't it about time that we became a republic?
Not at all, not at all. It's the constitutional system. The Queen personifies the Crown. And if you want to change that, if the Australian people want to change that, they will change their constitution completely because the Crown is at the centre of the Constitution. Now, I've noted the poll. Of course, it doesn't purport to represent the Australian people. When they actually go to vote, they look at what is being offered as the alternative. And as you saw in the massive defeat of the Republicans' preferred model in 1999, Australians prefer to stay with what has proved to be a very successful constitution.
Alison, I would imagine that's a problem for you. Even our snapshot poll, even though it was only 57% in terms of majority, and off the back of a referendum a few years back where it was defeated. I mean, where does that put you? There's not a clear majority here.
We were actually really encouraged by the poll results. That's not actually a good question for Republicans. Much better for a question for us is, would you like an Australian head of state instead of the Queen as our head of state? And if you have a question like that, you'll often see votes come back in 64, 70%. In that range. So there's obviously quite a lot of feeling behind that. We feel that it's a question that keeps coming back up every time there's a royal visit, every time we have Australia Day, Queen's birthday. There's any number of reasons why the issue of a republic keeps being looked at. It's not going away. There's obviously a lot of people who feel that it's an important issue, and we'd like to see it revisited in a national debate.
A lot of people say, why make a fuss? Why should we change anything? Let's keep it the way it is. Why should we change?
I think it's important to change so that we have an Australian head of state, someone in that position who personifies Australia, who can reflect Australia and its values and represent Australia and only Australia, both at home and overseas.
Well, you don't think the PM does that already?
I don't think that's the PM's role. I think it's actually the head of state's role on occasion to take that position and be a non-partisan position that can represent Australia overseas in a non-partisan way, not just in a political way.
In practice, how would it work? Because with the referendum, there was a lot of confusion over the model, and the issues seemed to get bogged down in that particular question. How would it work in practice?
Well, that's right. I actually agree with David on that, that it's the question that's actually put that's very important. The question 99, many people felt that the model that was put forward was not the model they would like. There was lack of consultation in terms of the model that was put forward. What we would like to see next time around is actually having some plebiscites, which are like a national poll, and actually asking people, the first question is, would you like an Australian head of state, yes or no? Then going on to a second question about what kind of republic you want. Would you like, what model you would like? We think it's up to the Australian people to make that decision. It's not up to David or I or anyone in Canberra to make that decision. It's up to the Australian people.
David, you would argue that they've already made that decision.
Yes, and that question, you want an Australian as the head of state, is based on an error. Head of state is a diplomatic term, and when the Governor-General goes overseas, for example, when he went to the Pope's funeral, he sat in the front row with the other heads of state. The Japanese Emperor only received heads of state in private audience. He received General Jeffreys in a private audience. Everywhere he goes, he is received as our head of state because it's a diplomatic term. So we have the best of both worlds. We have an Australian as a head of state. We have the Queen as our sovereign. We have a remarkable constitution, which is the envy of the world. Why change it?
But, David, I wonder if it's just a matter of time and that perhaps once the Queen retires, a lot of Australians might have an issue with King Charles, and that's an issue that they might not want to accept.
I doubt that the Queen will ever abdicate. I think she feels she's there for life, and she will be there for life. And as to the next reign, we can't tell. Charles has had a bad press, but many people forget, for example, that last year he raised $250 million for charity. He works remarkably well, and I think he will be respected if he succeeds to the throne.
Romilly, there's been a lot of talk that this might be the Queen's last visit to Australia. What do you think?
Well, the palace have been denying that quite strongly. I think in the newspapers around February they were saying this would be her last overseas tour altogether. And the palace immediately announced that no, she was going to go to the Baltic states in the autumn. But I think she can't keep up this sort of schedule for all that much longer. It's pretty punishing.
I hope she keeps going. I've got to meet her a little bit later. I'm having a cup of tea and a scone with her. What's the protocol in meeting her?
I think a nice bow.
A nice
go down
bow.
very well.
All right, I'll take that.
And you're wearing the right sort of socks today too, Carl.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.